You probably didn't know that the Amazing Digital Circus took over a year and a half just to make its first episode, and with all of that time, I've managed to find all of the clips of the Amazing Digital Circus's behind the scenes videos, and even some deleted scenes and hidden Easter eggs that we can scrape off of the footage. The show started in mid-2022 in pre-production to where it was finally finished in late 2023. First, taking a look at the behind the scenes animations. If we look at some of these scenes with Jax, Kaufmo, and Gangle, you can see on the bottom the finished version, but on the top you can actually see what it was like to animate them before adding in all the cool effects. For example, you can see the characters are colored in, but everything else is literally just gray, but you can see the slide that they go down is also colored in. So they make sure to get the important parts done first, and then they add in all the detail. Just like how they added in the outline of the radical cane sign by the slide, and then in the final version, they actually put all the lighting and make it look neon. But if you also look at some of the characters throughout these scenes, they just look a little bit off, and this is because they're not fully rendering these scenes out. When they actually needed to get the final scenes for the final cut of the episode, which is what we watch on YouTube, they fully render everything out in the highest detail, but when they're just going over animations and seeing if they need any tweaking, they will put it in the lowest graphic settings possible, which where you can see each character looks a little bit off. Every character's colors don't make sense with the lighting. Ragatha's hair just doesn't make sense at all. If you look at it compared to the actual version, it's just a lot less lifelike, which was probably done later with lighting. And if you look at Ragatha's dress, it's literally blue in the clip, which goes to show that they had to do a lot of details afterwards. And speaking of details, look at Zubul's torso. They literally didn't even put the shapes on her torso until after. But the funniest out of all of them is Kaufmo's abstracted form. What on planet Earth is this thing? Obviously, you can see in the finished version, Kaufmo does look cool. He's abstracted and all this thing is glitching. But when they have to actually animate him at first, he's literally just a giant ice cream blob with chip mints sprinkles all over him. I literally can't describe what this is. It just looks weird. Another part of the Amazing Digital Circus's production are the walking cycles. In order for the animators to save time, they add what's called cycles, where they'll have an animation that can loop and yet still look fluid and realistic. For example, walking. Gangle had a running animation which didn't look too hard. Hinger was insanely easy to make, according to one of the animators, where they literally just sway his hips side to side and move his hands up and down. But if you look at Zubul's walking animation, Kevin Temmer, one of the animators, said specifically that hers was one of the hardest because every few steps she stumbles, and this is because each part of her body is mixed and matched, so she's not used to them all the time, as she changes her parts nearly every single day. So with every step she stumbles, as she's still not used to her body, and that's just a little detail that you wouldn't know if you didn't watch the behind the scenes videos. But a lot of these animations went unused. There were 3 of Pomni's running animations that look pretty cool, but were just straight up not used and thrown out. It's possible that these were meant for the running away from Kaufmo scene after Kaufmo had abstracted, but if you look at that, they did a much better job with the fluidity of her running back and forth, side to side, and jumping all over the place, with Kaufmo doing the same. If they had just kept the same running animation cycle, it wouldn't look good. So this could mean that they'll save this for episode 2, which means who could she be running from in episode 2? Another abstracted character? We'll just have to see. But if you look at this scene here where they show the running animations for Kaufmo, you can see the same low-res blob running over and over in its cycle. But the thing is, they wrote this file down as abstracted Kaufmo and not abstracted monster, because if they wrote down abstracted monster, then this means they could use this same cycle for abstractions in the future. But they didn't. They specifically said this is just for Kaufmo, which means that other characters could abstract into different forms. We know that Kaufmo looked kind of like a horse, so what if the next one looks kind of like a bird? Who knows? We also got to see a lot of their testing animations, to where they had one of Pomni about to throw up, which is the scene right after Kane showed around the circus, and after too much teleportation, she did what she did. And this was to test both the animation as well as the jiggleness of the characters. Yes, I promise you, the jiggleness. If you look at this next test, they literally move her head around, decapitate her, and plop it right back on her. They're trying to test the physics physics of the Amazing Digital Circus characters, which means that could each character be really stretchy and bouncy and almost invincible? Maybe, but I think this is just testing. But why would they test this, you know? Raise some questions. But here's the thing, we have a deleted scene from when Ragatha and Pomni first saw Kaufmo. When they open the door and they all three see that Kaufmo had abstracted, Jax immediately runs away and Ragatha is there to explain what Kaufmo is to Pomni. But during that time, it's supposed to be a very intense and scary scene since they're seeing an abstraction that could literally kill them. However, some of the animators animated Ragatha to be a little bit too cartoony with her hand movements, so you can compare these two versions here and see that Gooseworks actually wanted it to be a bit more serious in tone, as abstractions are apparently a very serious thing in the circus. But the best part about seeing behind the scenes are the so-called cursed development images. These images were posted all over Twitter as well, to when the animators and Gooseworks were making the show, they decided to just go crazy and make some funny animations with the character rigs. So for example, we can see Pomni making some pretty crazy faces, but we also see that she has straight up pointy shark-like teeth. Now this could be real and her teeth are actually like that in certain animations, or this could be a cursed image that they made for fun and not actually just moving the character around. As well, we can see a photo of Jax's face fusing into his teeth, which literally proves that his entire head underneath the purple is a yellow ball. A yellow ball with two black squares for an eye and some black lines for teeth. He's literally a yellow ball. But this one, I don't even know what to say about this one. Like what happened here, bro? What were the animators thinking? They straight up put Jax with his mouth looking like a Dyson vacuum cleaner with the tiny Pomni sharp teeth and two tiny black squares for eyes. At this point, the animators were just like, all right, how far can we stretch it without breaking the software? Another cursed scene is after Pomni loses Kaufmo and decides to go back for Ragatha, since, you know, she literally left her for dead. You can see that Pomni is going towards Ragatha, but not even walking, and rather just Minecraft creative moding towards her. Like, her arms aren't even moving, her hands kinda do, but what is happening with her legs? Which is probably an early part of their animation, but it's kind of weird to see why they would animate like this unless they were just doing it for fun, but that's a lot of work for fun. But something you didn't know is that there was actually a deleted intro to the show. They literally redid the entire intro scene with a different song and decided to pick between the two. One of which was obviously the version that we have today, but the other of which was this version. And before I play it, don't worry, the vocals would have been the same as the current version that we have today. It's just that they didn't go with this version, so they didn't put in all the editing.
Let's get right into the show. And Skangle and Zooble and Giga too. Ragatha and Jax and then there's Kaufmo. Many wonders can be found. Send you spinning round and round until you fly to the moon and then the sun and we don't know why. La, 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 la. You won't believe your eyes. Prepare for a surprise. Don't touch that door. There's so much more. You don't know what's in store. Watch out for the...
I don't know about you guys, but the beginning of that intro was kind of cool, but when they started going la 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 la, nah, I am so glad they made the right decision to go with the intro that they did, as that could have probably killed the show. I can imagine myself literally clicking off of the video the first time I watched the episode if I were to hear that. But the one important part that we have about the current song versus that old unused song is that the new one glitches saying day after day after day after day, which is them foreshadowing that they're stuck in a time looped prison. And the old unused version just kind of shows, oh yeah, this is a circus, this is a cool place, rather than hinting at the dark lore behind it, which is why fans love the show so much in the first place. But what's really weird about the old unused song is that Kane is telling Pomni not to touch the door, referencing the exit door that he apparently made as revealed later in the episode. But why would he want Pomni not to touch the door if he said he made it for them to go through? This is very interesting, as it could mean that the exit door is a real place and that the void could be the exit. But then again, this will never be confirmed to be canon. However, there is a very high chance that it is, as there's no reason they would include those lyrics if they didn't have those intentions. And the last thing I wanted to look at is the demo for the Amazing Digital Circus, of which we have a few. Most of you probably haven't seen this, as there are 200 million views on the pilot episode and only a few million views on these demos, in which we have the meet the cast version of the Amazing Digital Circus, where we meet every single character, but they don't really say any words, and rather they just talk like characters from The Sims and do some funny things. But this was actually the animators getting used to the full rigs of the characters, which is why it looks slightly off and not fully detailed. And the animation is a bit unfluid, but eventually they got it good with the pilot episode, so I'm glad that they did this demo in the beginning. As well, in the teaser that we got on Gooseworks' channel, where Kane was showing us around the Digital Circus months before its release, he shows us some main rooms, the dorm hall, what looks to be an old 90s video game coding room, I don't know what this is, the cellar, and the dorm hall once again. But this time he couldn't change it as quickly as he wanted to because Kaufmo's foot was sticking out, which means that Kaufmo could have actually escaped but chose not to, which is interesting. But then it cuts to Kane and Pomni, and Kane literally starts throwing knives at Pomni, and then after it cuts the scene, we eventually see Pomni with knives inside of her, which goes to show that Kane is terrible at throwing knives, but they didn't feel any pain just because Kane can control whatever happens in the Amazing Digital Circus. But let me know if there are any other deleted scenes that I just didn't find down in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video here.